Let there be light, there was light, and love said, it is good, I can see you.
I can see you.
Let there be light, there was light, and love said, it is good, I can see you.
I can see you.
It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day today.
Aloha! Dr. Bear here with you. Welcome to this exciting episode of Mauitopia. I hope that today you're ready to have your heart opened and your mind eased with something beautiful, something mystical, something out of this world, something Mauitopian. And today we have a being who is the very embodiment of that word, Mauitopia. He has created a literal Mauitopia on the North Shore in a place that he likes to call the Spirit of Aloha, oceanfront, botanical gardens, and bird sanctuary. And as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, is nothing short of a Shangri-La, a new Eden, if you will. And this is a place where Frederick Swaroop Honeg, also known as Swami Swarupananda, a nature guardian and a leading exponent of Nada Yoga, practices the science of meditation and teaches us about holistic approaches to a dietary choice that is both compassionate and compelling at the same time. Now, this is a man who has his finger in a lot of creative pies, a lot of creative realms on the island, but first and foremost, he is a leader in the realm of consciousness and an embodier of such things. Now, we're going to talk about what that means. We're going to get deep into the heart and mind of Swami Swarupananda. So sit back, relax, and get ready to have your heart opened on this episode of Mauitopia.
This is the Abraham Garden, and it's dedicated to the core value of love. And Abraham was the first visionary to realize that God is all one. Before that time, everyone thought there was a God of the ocean, a God of the sky, a God of this and that. He realized that there was only one unit of energy, and he was the foundation of Judaism, and of Christianity, and of Islam. And all three of those religions consider Abraham to be their patriarch. So he unites the world religions for more than 80% of humanity. And it is our hope that that Aloha spirit, which is also love, love and Aloha are one and the same, will propagate through the world through programs that we hold here at this sacred Abraham Garden. And it's also blessed with a beautiful waterfall. And this is the Keali'i stream. That means the greatest royalty, Keali'i Nui, the land, the Hawaiian name for this land. And this island, which is in this bay here, is called Papa Nui o Kane, which means the great reef of Kane, which was is the Hawaiian name for God. So the great reef of God is here in this bay. And the bay itself is called Ua'oa, which means the misty rain. And in the Hawaiian understanding, the sign of the presence of God is the Ua'oa. The misty rain is the symbol of the presence of God. It creates the rainbows. So in this sacred Ua'oa Bay, before the island of Papa Nui o Kane, with Keali'i Nui stream coming to the ocean, it's a fitting place to have a temple and dedicated to all world religions and to really the Aloha spirit that pervades all world religions. I hope that you'll come and visit and enjoy it yourself. Mahalo and aloha. This is a picture of my beloved parents, Jean and Jay Koenig, who are really the inspiration for the gardens having happened. They were so loving and open-minded, generous in supporting me in my vision and also in funding it. And that was my dad when they were first, and mom when they were first married, and my dad was...
Aloha, welcome to Mauitopia. Dr. Bear here with you, and I am sitting with a being whose heart, whose light is visceral, to say the least. Swaroop, I want to thank you so much for being on Mauitopia today.
Thank you, Dream Bear. It is an honor. Thank you.
Well, you know, you do so much for the world, and you have been for so long, and yet you're out here in the North Shore, kind of away from it all, kind of out in the oasis of the navel of the island, as it were, and you're holding a space that is both powerful, potent, but also humble, I would say, a space that is close to nature. When you began your journey so many years ago, did you have any idea that such a oasis would reveal itself to you?
Well, I would say from a young age, I loved nature. Like I remember even my parents fed the birds, and I remember how I enjoyed, even from a young age, going to the park and finding old trails where nobody was at and being alone in nature. So I always knew from a young childhood that nature would be a big part of my life.
It just spoke to you in some level, and somehow it has manifested itself in your life in such a visceral and powerful way. I consider this a new Eden in the truest sense. Literally.
It is. It's like living in heaven.
Now, your journey has been extensive. Your journey has been interesting. It's been unique, to say the least. Can you tell us just a little bit about where you first came from? Where did your life journey begin? And then let's get a little bit about how that path changed when you took the monastic vows.
Okay. Well, I was born into a liberal Jewish family, and my parents were really amazing, and they encouraged me from a young age to follow my dreams. And they said, don't worry about money, just what you really should worry about is how can you serve the planet. Like, you have to think in your own heart, what unique gifts did God give you, and how can you use those gifts to be serviceful to the world.
So you were telling me a little bit about how you got this vision started, and then your family played a big role in that. Was it a challenge coming from a traditional Jewish family and then going on such a non-traditional path?
Well, it's surprising, but my parents, even though they were traditional Jewish, they were very open-minded. And they taught us from a very young age that all religions, had value, and that you couldn't judge people just because of their religion. And we had neighbors who were close friends who were Christian who lived next door, and we would go over and celebrate Christmas with them.
I see.
And at the temple that I grew up with, they taught us, rhymes and little songs. And when I, chose ultimately to live in a yoga ashram and to study Eastern religion, my parents supported me in that, even though it was quite different than the tradition that we were brought up in.
Right. And what point in your life did this epiphany strike you that there was something different for you?
Well, that's an interesting thing. When I was growing up, I did have a strong spiritual understanding. I remember my mother taught me about God and praying, and I remember that, I was surprised how prayers did seem to work, and so I, had that from the youngest, from a childhood, I had that gift. But still, I thought that my greatest service to the planet would be to be a mechanical engineer, because I was very good in science and numbers, and I have a very practical part, and I could fix anything. And I thought that I would probably work in designing electric vehicles. Wow. And that's what was so. I went to the University of California at Berkeley, and I was studying mechanical engineering. And during that time, I did have a spiritual experience that was very powerful and life-changing. And I had, at one point, an experience of the unit of consciousness of the universe, a very profound experience. And that, changed and shifted my attention to realizing that really what people need and what I need myself is to understand what that is, that unit of consciousness. And so it shifted my attention from being into mechanical engineering to being into studying the nature of consciousness.
Which, to some extent, you've bridged, and we'll get into what that means as you brought the physics into the consciousness aspect.
Exactly. It's like both sides of my brain are humming and with the same tune, because physics, in a way, if you really study it correctly, it's really the science of God. It's the science of how God thinks in its manifestation in the universe. So by really studying physics, you can understand God. It's just another way of doing it. It's another religion in a way.
Another device, as it
Yeah.
were. Well, when you began this path so many years ago, was there a moment that you said to yourself, okay, a life of service is calling me, and I'm going to go into this monastic phase of my existence? And because that, to me, that seems like such a drastic choice to make, and such a life commitment. Was there something in particular that drew you into that choice? And then once you tell me about that, let me know a little bit about what was the initial giving yourself over, the surrendering to that path like for you?
Well, when I had these spiritual experiences, I dropped out of Berkeley, and I went and lived in a cabin on my own in Northern California, and I started meditating. So I was deepening my meditation practice. And at some point, I really felt that it would be useful for me to compare notes with other spiritual teachers. So I drove down to Berkeley, and I was looking for different spiritual teachers. I thought I'd have to go to India. But as it turns out, Swami Satchidananda was offering a retreat in Sonoma County, just that weekend starting, and I signed up for that retreat and went to it. It was a 10-day silent retreat. And during that time, I had already been experimenting with vegetarian diet, but I wasn't completely established in it. So during that retreat, I got established in being a vegetarian, and also I had to occasionally smoke grass and different things, little experimenting with different things. And from that point, for the next 21 years, I didn't smoke one drop. I was completely shifted that and just got into the meditation. And so after having had that 10-day silent retreat, I decided to join that organization. And I went down to the Santa Cruz Institute and joined forces with that organization. I lived in Santa Cruz for about a year. But Swami Satchidananda was mostly at that time based at the main ashram in Connecticut. And even though I wasn't really looking to shift the weather to Connecticut, I decided to make that shift, and I moved to the main center. And I really spent 20 years living in that center, studying very closely with Swami Satchidananda. In a certain way, I spent more time with him than almost any other of his disciples in many ways, because I did projects with him. So we would work together. He loved mechanics, and he actually had a background in all kinds of different mechanical endeavors, and he loved to build things. And so I had my engineering ability came in handy, and I ended up doing all kinds of projects with him.
Oh, wow.
And so I ended up not just learning from him the philosophy, but also learning from him to see God in nature and in things. Like, he would treat everything with such reverence that just to do an auto repair with him was really like doing a worship ceremony. Like the care and also the attention that he brought to every little detail really taught me a different level of consciousness just in working.
Wow, that's powerful, and it seems like a practical approach, but also a deeply spiritual approach that brought you into a deeper awareness of who you were as well along the journey.
It was a beautiful, I'm very grateful for having had that 20 years of close experience of working in a yoga ashram and serving in that community. And it was inspiring on many levels, and at the same time it kind of washes your ego. When you live in a community with people, everyone is very generous in pointing out your faults.
Right.
And you have to learn how to accept criticism of certain types and still be able to serve and kind of get over that. And it's hard, to adapt, adjust, and accommodate to group living is not easy. And
Right.
so all in all, it was a really beautiful and humbling and inspiring experience.
If you had to take away one major lesson from that time and share it with us, what would that be?
I believe that Swami Satchidananda was the embodiment of selfless service. And I believe that anyone who gives himself or herself to God in the form of nature and uses their life energy for service to the best of their ability will find that the unitive energy will rush through them and support them to take care of all of the details that make it possible for them to fulfill their goal of being serviceful. So I would say the one thing that I learned from Swami Satchidananda is the joy of being serviceful.
Joy of being serviceful. What a powerful thing to offer this world. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're sitting here with Swaroop, and we are learning so much just by being in his presence. I want you to sit back, relax, and get ready for more heart opening on this episode of Mauitopia.
It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Aloha, welcome back to Mauitopia. Dr. Bear here. I'm sitting with Swaroop, and we are here at the oceanfront Spirit of Aloha Botanical Garden and Bird Sanctuary. It is a Shangri-La to be taken in by the senses. Every inch of it is a veritable paradise, and he is, if nothing else, the Adam of this Eden. And I'd like to ask you a little bit about your life after Yogaville. Now, you had this life of service, this life of selfless giving, of yoga. What was the moment that you decided to go in a different direction yet again? And how did that lead you to Maui?
Well, I could answer in a couple ways. The first thing I could say is that somehow in my life, I've always found that every 21 years with the solar cycle, there's a certain solar magnet, that I more or less reevaluate my life and kind of come up with my next plan for the next 20 years. So the first 21 years was between growing up with my parents and going to Berkeley. And then the next 20-year or 21-year period was with Swami Satchidananda. I had that experience, and I really felt that after having been there for 20 years that I really learned the lessons that I needed from that environment, and that I had given the gifts that I really had to give. We built a beautiful shrine called Lotus, the Light of Truth Universal Shrine, dedicated to all world religions, that now has another model of that same shrine was just built in India. So the good work that we did is also bearing fruits.
I actually had the privilege of visiting that shrine, and it's such a unique environment. You walk into this circular area that's just so full of power and potency, and each of the religions so beautifully represented there.
Yeah.
I didn't know you had a part in all this.
Do you know that central light column?
Right.
That was my design. I engineered that and built that.
Beautiful. That's
central
probably
light
the
column.
central feature
It
that
is.
really stands out.
It is, and the six flames, that was also my work, and the lake, and the fountain in the lake. I built that, and the irrigation system, and I worked on the design of that building, making sure that it was all symmetrical. Every aspect of it.
Such
So
a
that was-
unique building.
It is.
on the
It's so
planet.
beautiful.
It is.
It's really a heaven on earth. And living at Yogaville was a little bit like living in heaven. In that the people there are so loving and selfless and giving that it really was an inspiration.
Right.
And during those the next 21-year period that I was embarking, starting at age 41, I decided to really reevaluate and think about what my life mission would be. And so I just let my mind dream, and I go with what are the inspirations that come to me in meditations. And so when I was meditating, I had different ideas of how the world could become like heaven, like that the whole world would be heaven. And I had this idea for ways that it might be possible to transcend the institution of war by having diplomatic ways of solving things. And so I wrote up a 20-point proposal, and I went to the UN. And at Yogaville, we have different centers in every city, and we have a beautiful center in New York where I had served many times. And given talks and programs there. And so I went, and they were very gracious to host me to stay at their at the institute there. And I spent some time at the UN, talking with all the different the NGOs, the different organizations there, to see whether I thought it would be possible to make any headway with this notion of ending the institution of war. But after having spent a little time pounding those pavements, I came to a conclusion that world change is not possible from the top up. It has to happen from the bottom. Like it's from the grassroots that the world changes. You can't legislate global change. Like you can't create laws or organizations or systems to create change. You have to become the change, and you have to start it out of the grassroots. So I had this idea of just creating one cell of heaven. That I would just, like create heaven somewhere and start, and then maybe after we had one cell of heaven, we could do a cell mitosis, or, where you could have 2 cells, and then you could have 4 cells, and so you could make world heavenly by just creating heaven spots. So I felt like I had really done my part to make Yogaville heavenly, and it was well established in that. So and also the other factor was that I wanted to see how I would do spiritually without being right in the middle of the support of the ashram. Like, how would I fly on my own? And so Swamiji opened the cage. Like, it wasn't a cage. Like, we were never. He was always saying that we should follow our own guidance. Like, don't stay there for the sake of the ashram. You should stay there for your own sake. And so when I told him of this vision, he very much supported me in that, and so did my parents. And they said, just follow your dreams and go for whatever you think. And so I decided to look around and find one cell of heaven, even though I didn't know how in the world I would finance it. It was just like a leap of faith. And I looked around in the Caribbean, and first, and for different reasons that didn't seem appropriate to me. They were having hurricanes. There's a lot of racial tension. There's this bug called a no-see-um. And so for different reasons, it didn't seem to me as though that's exactly heaven. And then Angel came here, my sister, Meenakshi, who's a great yoga teacher. She was chosen, I think, of over 200 applicants to the Grand Wailea to teach yoga. She was chosen out of 200 applicants as the first yoga teacher. And she taught there for 17 years with excellence. She never missed one day of work. And people really wrote so many wonderful things in our comment cards, and people would come back to Maui just to be taking her classes again. And her courses and her goals clarification sessions. And she also did a goals clarification session for me that helped me and clarify my goals for coming here. So anyway, with the support of my family and with Swamiji's support, I just decided to take a leap. And Angel was buying a car here. She wanted me to help her buy a used car. So I came to Maui with the idea that maybe I would stay. And after having spent a little time here, I decided, yes, this is the place. And I got one of Swamiji's students had a beautiful estate in Lahaina, and she put me up there, and I started teaching in churches close by all over the island, yoga classes that were very popular. And I even got a job at the Grand Wailea. I was on their staff teaching yoga and meditation and stress management at the Grand Wailea. And then I met Wayne Dyer, and we did a couple retreats with him, and I helped him also in understanding deeper levels of meditation, and was inspired also by his work. And so little by little, I decided to try to create a space, and somehow I was looking around for land, even though I wasn't exactly sure how I would pay for it or whatever. And this land at that time, that was 21 years ago, it was just jungle, and it was before all the multimillionaires had grown and come into the neighborhood, and there was no electricity or phone or water or buildings. This structure here was an old dilapidated barn. So this was just like the end of the world back then. And I decided just to take a leap of faith. And my parents said that my parents had built a home at Yogaville, and they said if we wanted to, I could sell that home and get the down payment for this and use it for that. And so my parents kind of opened the door to allow that to happen. And they gave me their blessings, even though I'm moving so far away from them, to make that leap. And I moved here, and I lived in a tent for the first 6 months. And I, generated electricity with a windmill. I built a little windmill here, and I got roof catchment and got water, and I tapped a little spring that we had on the property. And I lived very close to nature, kind of in a tent for the first year or so. And during that time, little by little, I renovated all of these structures and built all these structures and brought in electricity and drilled a well and brought in phone and all the utilities and established 2 nonprofit organizations. One is Wellbeing International, that is educational for the well-being of the planet, and one is Spirit of Aloha Temple, which is dedicated to incorporating the spirit of aloha into being a world culture. Because I believe there will come a day when humanity unites its loving energy under the banner of the spirit of aloha.
Indeed.
And and I think that the spirit of, if you go all over the world, like the one thing that everyone respects all over the world is the aloha spirit. And I believe that that spirit will ultimately become a standard for human culture. And so I would like to see this spirit of aloha thrive here in the Hawaiian Islands. And I'd also like to see the Hawaiian people to be restored to their great health. You know, like the native Hawaiians were originally 95% plant-based in their nutrition. And with that nutrition, they were very strong and healthy. And their heritage is breadfruit and taro and vegetables, but not spam. And if we can kind of help to get them back to their original nutrition, then they will again thrive again as a culture. So that's one goal that I have here. We have ancient taro patches that I'd like to restore. We've planted beautiful taro plants and beautiful breadfruit trees. And this body that you're looking at is more than half made out of breadfruit. Like I eat breadfruit every day, almost a whole breadfruit every day. And I have a magic tree here that generates breadfruit for me almost 10 months out of the year. It creates a second crop for me because it knows how much I love it. And so I have breadfruit almost all year long, and I just love it. It really feeds not just my body, but my soul. And as I'm eating it, I can feel its loving energy permeating my being. And so I really would love to see the Hawaiian Islands ultimately become the breadfruit isle. And I would like to see breadfruit, being propagated all over the planet to help feed humanity.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful vision. Well, let's talk a little bit more about what breadfruit means to you when we come back from this break. But in the meantime, I want you to consider all that has been said thus far, and I want you to ask yourself the question, what is my vision for the future? If I had a 20, a 40, a 60-year plan, what would that look like? And could I manifest something half as beautiful, or even a fraction as beautiful as the Spirit of Aloha Oceanfront Botanical Gardens? Because we're sitting with a man who has done just that, and I think that he has a lot more to teach us. So sit back, relax, and get ready for more on this episode of Mauitopia.
Let's get high on life, on love. Let's rise above. Get high on life, on love. Let's rise above. Get high on life, on love. Let's rise above. Get high on life, on love. Let's rise above.
Here we are at the Aloha Temple. This is actually a licensed structure. It's Maui's only tent building, and we can host private gatherings here. So if anyone's interested in holding a sacred private event at the gardens, they could contact us on our website, which is thegardens.org. And I can give you a little brief tour of this. We have 4 tables that hold about 40 people. And we have beautiful bathrooms that are here and serving areas. And we can have catered events catered here also. And my goal is to be able to use this as an educational center for promoting plant-based nutrition. It's from here that we'll actually do the programs, and we'll videotape them and go out into the world promoting Hawaiian horticulture.
What, in your opinion, is the meaning of existence?
Well, the meaning of existence is to know who you are, to know who am I. And if you really follow that carefully back into your consciousness with a still mind, you'll find that you are one with unitive consciousness. Ultimately, the universe is one living organism. The entire universe is one unitive field of consciousness. And the consciousness of any living being is one with that unit of consciousness, the same way that a wave is one with the ocean. A wave may have its own frequency, its own power, its own look, but still it's not different than the ocean itself. And I don't think it's useful for any of us to say, I am the ocean, because a wave is not the ocean. We're all one with the ocean, but we're not the ocean itself. So I believe for us to be humble and grateful for our connection with the unit of consciousness is really the blessing that any one of us can attain.
That's powerful. Now, for those who are saying to themselves, okay, I get that, I feel that, that's strong, I can implement that into my everyday practice, my everyday way of seeing life, but they want to know as well, perhaps, this question, which is, what, in your opinion, Swaroop, do you think an individual can do at this time to make the world a better place?
I think that that's the question everyone has to ask himself or herself. And I think that that what really the gift that anyone can give is first to make yourself peaceful and happy. Like, it's impossible really to change the outside world. The outside world can only be the reflection of you. Like, each person creates in a way his or her own world depending on the energy that they're projecting. So the first gift that everyone has to do is to feel and experience their own peace within. And in order to do that, like, the greatest goal for doing that is one has to practice non-violence in one's life. Because any violence that we project to the outside world ultimately will come back and affect our own peace. And so if we can put our loving, kind energy to the planet, we will find that the planet will return that to us through the golden rule. And the way I believe that one can do that the most optimally is to choose vegan nutrition, because the love that I have for this breadfruit tree is the same love that other people can have for plants, and it's such a powerful synergy. When that tree needs to be trimmed, I trim it. When it's drought, I'm sure to water it, and I talk to it every day, and it smiles back at me. And the food that it gives me is custom made for my well-being. I can feel if I have a little sore, if I've got a little injury, anything, that as soon as I eat that, as I'm eating and chewing it, I can feel already the healing energy that's coming to my body immediately. And if one can have that loving energy by eating plants instead of animals, nature will bless you. Because animals have very high levels of consciousness that are very close to humans. Like, humans think that they're somehow very different from animals, but they are not. And the natural food source for all humanity is plant-based. If humans are by nature herbivores, if you look at our intestines, you'll find that we have 30 some feet of intestines. Carnivore only has 5 to 10 feet of intestines. So if a human eats carnivore food, it will putrefy within that 30 feet of intestines and cause cancer, heart disease, arteriosclerosis, and all those problems, which will keep that human from really being able to be serviceful to planet Earth. So for the sake of the animals and the plants, the ecology of the planet, and our own personal well-being, the greatest gift that we can offer the planet is to go vegan.
If you were to offer the world one piece of advice from all the life that you've lived thus far, Swaroop, what would that one piece of advice be?
I think that each person has to find their connection to God in their own way. And that is really the goal of life, to have that connection. It doesn't matter how you exactly visualize God, but each person has to have that attainment of their connection with God. And once one has that experience that God is on your side, that nature is on your side, it makes you fearless in a way. And once you're fearless, you can really serve the planet well. In a certain way, the fear of death itself is the greatest and underlying fear of all other fears. It's the root of all fears and the root of all weaknesses. And if we can get over that fear by having confidence in the unit of field itself, in God itself, and have our own connection, so that when we close our eyes and just look within, wisdom flows through us. It's not like that we have to think everything through ourselves, but we're more or less a channel for united energy to flow through us. That, I believe, is the greatest gift that anyone can give to him or herself or to the world.
So what would you say to Maui?
Okay. Well, I worship the island of Maui as the Mother Nature herself. And I see the island as one of the most sacred spaces that the world has ever had. It's a living temple. And I pray that those who live on this island worship the island with the same fervor. And I have a vision for this island that I would love to share with Mother Maui and ask for her blessings to let this happen. I would love to see Maui become the vegan capital of the world. I would love, and I would call it Hawaiian cuisine. I would love to see that people come here to Maui and that they're healed by eating in the restaurants of the island that serve a nutrition that's at least 95% plant-based with just 5% fish. If people could move that far and raise the fish here on the island instead of taking them from the ocean, I would love to see the oceans become marine sanctuaries so that the coral would grow back, because right now the coral is being destroyed by not having enough reef fish. Like if there are no reef fish, the coral can't grow because it gets covered with algae. And so the only way the coral can be comfortable and happy is if there are enough reef fish. So my prayer is that the island will grow hydroponic food and make large lakes on the inner side, on the inner part of the island to feed the 5% fish that would be grown, and those fish would be treated humanely during their life, and the 5% would be used for the nutrition of people. And other than that, I would hope that no animals would be disturbed or no fish would be disturbed, and that the island would go vegan. And I would like to see all of this sugar cane transposed into fruit orchards. I would love to see breadfruit growing everywhere and every type of fruit, so that Maui grows all of its own food for its residents, for its guests, plus it exports. Like instead of us importing food, we should export. And I would hope that there will come a time when we would not import any plant material from outside of the island, because with every plant that comes the risk of disease from outside, bugs, insects, and all kinds of challenges that this island does not need. And if we didn't import these plants, we could give the Maui farmers a job and make it possible for them to make a living. I would like to see the island have all of its electricity come from geothermal plants on the Big Island. Like I believe that we could create a temple for Pele on the top of Mauna Kea that would generate all of the electricity through geothermal means for the entire state. And we could run a cable between the islands under the ocean so that we're able to power every single state with the geothermal energy of the Big Island. And not only could we power the state, but we could also produce hydrogen through electrolysis, and we could use that for a fuel source for our jet planes. And we could have the most advanced culture that the world has ever had, living in the spirit of Aloha, and also living in total harmony with nature, with a carbon footprint that actually produces more oxygen than CO2.
That's a veritable Mauitopia if ever I've heard of one.
We will turn into love.
Aloha, welcome back to Mauitopia. We have been sitting at the Spirit of Aloha Oceanfront Botanical Garden and Bird Sanctuary, and we're sitting with its creator, its founder, its visionary, the heart and soul behind the vision, a man named Swami Swaroop, or just plain old Swaroop if you want to be heart to heart with him, because that's the kind of person he is, just a heart to heart kind of a being. And as we've been sitting here with you so much, I want to just say thank you for the vision that you carry. Thank you for the vision that you manifest. and for making it possible. There are pioneers in the planet that see how the planet could be, and they take action, and you're one of those people who have really pioneered not just the literal jungle that this place once was, but the new Eden that it has become. And I want you to tell us a bit about that vision. When you first got the land, you were telling us about how thick it was and how the little by little, everyday, heartfelt additions that you've made have brought it to where it is now. But what's the ultimate vision you have for this place?
Ultimately, I would like it to be one cell of heaven. I would like it to be a strong spiritual connection to heaven. And when people come here, I want them to feel that they're in heaven. And I believe that what we call heaven is actually accessible to each one of us here and now while we're living. It isn't like you have to die to go to heaven. You could be in heaven here and now while you're living. And I sometimes think that I might already be in heaven. Like, in a way, this is really for me like heaven. Like, I love birds, and I wake up every day and I have 100 different bird friends who are greeting me in the morning. And I love nature, and I love to swim in the ocean. I can go swimming in the ocean here. So to me, it really feels like heaven. And so I would like to see, this to be an educational center. We have ancient taro fields here. I'd like to restore those and really grow taro and in a very profound way, and have every type of breadfruit tree here, and noni and lilikoi, and other types of tropical fruits, so that there's really food growing everywhere, that we have enough food for all of our guests. And I'd like to do small programs, mostly with about 20, maybe to 40 people occasionally, that would be really having different world leaders come and speak and do programs and videotape them and have it go out into the world to help the planet go vegan. And also I'm interested in having a certain type of meditation that I teach called Nada Yoga, Nada meditation. I'd like to see it taught ultimately in schools all around the world, but I believe that it's the right of every human being to know the science of meditation. And it's really not something that is from any one religion. It's common to all world religions. And it's something that's needed because right now, most people think that their happiness is something in attaining something in the world or achieving something outside of themselves. If they think that their goal, they have to think of a goal, they have to fulfill a goal, they have to achieve that goal, and then they'll be happy. But the truth of the matter is that happiness is who we are. It's the nature of our own consciousness. And the only thing we really have to do to be happy is to still our mind, and we'll see that the happiness is already there. And if people think that happiness comes from outside, there'll always be a fear that, something could happen and I'll lose that, and I'll lose my happiness. And so that's like, fear and love don't go together. They're like oil and vinegar. They separate from each other. And what you really need, I think, the gift that everyone has to give himself or herself is the inner ability to access their own inner bliss instantly all the time. So you have that inner peace yourself that's not dependent on any position, on any place, on any time, or being with anyone, just your own inner consciousness. And to achieve that, the science of meditation has been established. It's already 10,000 years old, but you would never know about it if you went to school today. It's like completely hidden. It's not talked about. It's not spoken of. It's completely ignored. And with the idea that happiness can be achieved in the outside world, happiness never can be, truthfully. And the more that people look in the outside world, the more frustrated they are, the more they think they need more and more and more, and the more they get more and more, the more unhappy they are. So if you want to get off of the rat race, so to speak, and get into the peace race, the science of meditation is that. And so I'd like to teach that here and get it into the mainstream. The same way, in a way, within my life, I helped to get yoga into the mainstream. When I first started, it's 40 years ago now, teaching yoga, it was people thought yoga was just standing in your head or something. It wasn't. It was so unheard of, and now it's so commonplace. And I think the next step is to get all of those yoga teachers to go vegan, to stop smoking cigarettes, and to get off of alcohol. Alcohol, I also think, is very dangerous. You know, it disturbs your mental balance. And I think that if people can get sober and find their own bliss within without having to take any drugs, that's the greatest gift.
That's powerful. Well, do you mind if we go out on the land and see some of that you created here, and maybe you could show us what Eden's like?
I'd be grateful to. I'd love to introduce you to my kids, the birds.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're ready for a treat. I want you to get ready, get some popcorn, get back by the TV, and get ready to be wowed on this episode of Mauitopia.
Come ride the sky, bareback with me. Let's be wild and free. Come ride the sky, bareback with me. Let's be wild and free.
These are my budgie friends, and they are important because they are grass seed eaters, and the native birds that were grass seed eaters are all extinct. They're the most vulnerable of all the bird colony. Without a grass seed eater bird, you cannot grow a colony of birds. And so these are pitching in to help the bird colony revive. And we've gotten rid of mongooses on the property, so they're relatively safe. Occasionally a mongoose gets on, but we have about 20 traps set around the property for mongooses. So it's pretty much mongoose-free and pretty safe environment for the budgies. And once the budgies start eating grass, all the other birds will come down to the ground and start eating different things too, and it starts the whole bird colony going. So that's what these guys' function is.
Beautiful.
Things about birds is that for every pound of food that they eat, they also eat food on their own, so they produce about 4 pounds of fertilizer. And so, it becomes the least expensive way for us, and the best way for us to fertilize the fruit orchard is just to feed the birds here. And after these birds leave, these are the boldest of them. They don't eat all of the bird seed. Then all the shire birds that are the local native birds will come next, like after these guys fly off, and they'll do the next round. So all day long there are birds that are hanging out here at the orchard fertilizing it. And now you can see also, a Nui is here giving his blessings. And you can see him with his feathers open. Ni, ni. Ni, ni. Nui's my baby. He was born here about 18 years ago. Ni. This is our Nene pond, and it's dedicated to unity. So in a way, the greatest wisdom is to understand that we're all one. And we have school programs here from different groups of school children who come and students, and they hold hands around here and do beautiful prayers like chanting Ua Maraka Ea Eka Aina Ika Kono. And you can see that next here is the grandmother tree. That's about a 100-year-old mango tree. And we have the grandfather tree on this side here. And those trees also bring us mango fruit. And we have also at the gardens beautiful fruit orchards that I'll just drive you past. Aloha, here we are at the Spirit of Aloha Botanical Gardens at the Papa Nui Okane Taro Field. And this is dedicated to the Hawaiian virtue of cooperation. And really the Hawaiians were the epitome of cooperation. And they really learned how to cooperate, which made it possible for them to, in their outrigger canoes, to sail 2,500 miles before any other cultures were able to achieve that. When the Vikings were still afraid to go beyond the horizon because they would fall off the edge of the world. The Hawaiians were already safely migrating between here and Easter Island, Rapa Nui, successfully. And the Hawaiians brought to this island taro and grew taro here, their main food source. And they were very ingenious, and they diverted the stream to flow through this valley so they were able to grow wetland taro. And they had a way of completely controlling the flow of the stream, so if it were flooding they could keep it from too much water coming, and if they wanted to dry the whole field out so they could easily harvest, they would do that also. And there are 7 different lo'i in this field here, and we have been working for almost 20 years to get the permission from the Department of Land and Natural Resources Historical Preservation Division to be able to restore these taro fields to their original glory. And we finally got that permission. It was like just weeks ago. Our preservation plan was accepted, and we will soon be restoring this and be growing taro here. And so we'll have breadfruit French fries, taro burgers, and coconut milkshakes without any dairy. But we'll be having, American food that's very delicious, that's totally nutritious at the same time. And you can also see this historic area here. And we have this throne here that is dedicated to King Kamehameha. And we invoke his blessings to guide us also in understanding how we can unite these islands to do good for the planet. Thank you, and aloha.
It's a beautiful, beautiful.
All throughout the land, the gardens, we have urns of water that have within them a native fish that comes from the streams of Hawaii called a mosquito fish. And these are very effective ways of controlling mosquito populations because we don't change the water. The same water has been here for over 5 years. We just top it off. And so when the mosquitoes are looking for a place to plant their larvae, they choose these urns because they have the most stagnant water, which appeals to mosquitoes. And when the worms turn into those little larvae that kind of wiggle back and forth, it is the perfect food for these hungry fish that live in these urns. We don't actually feed the fish. All they eat is the algae from the roots of the plants or that grow in the urn themselves. But there are probably 30 or 40 little fish that live in each one of these urns that are big mosquito larvae eaters. So we're able to pretty much control the mosquito population at the gardens without using any pesticides. And the whole gardens are completely organic. We're able to run the entire 11-acre botanical garden using no chemical fertilizers and using no herbicides or pesticides. And now I'm going to share my passion of yummy vegan food. I call myself a vegangelist, and I try to proselytize for vegan food wherever I can go. This is the most delicious salad that was all grown. Every part of the ingredients was grown here on the island of Maui. So that's like the most delicious salad that you can have. And I'm going to show you how to make breadfruit French fries. Here is a breadfruit salad, which is one of my favorite things to have for lunch. And basically what I do is I cut up breadfruit and I put little pieces of breadfruit in, and then cut up little kale and chard and green onions and mix them in, and then add a little olive oil and a little soy sauce and a little mustard. Dijon mustard is really yummy. And a little spike and a little cayenne. And it makes the world's most delicious, it's like a potato salad, but it's a breadfruit salad, and you can eat it cold. And this is like what I consider to be the world's yummiest lunch. And also at lunch, I also have the leftovers from the vegetables that I make the night before. I have them cold. So for lunch I have, these are daikon radishes, and these are beets and all kinds of charred greens that, I have a little bit of cooked vegetables with my lunch also. And you can see how I cut it up. Basically, I take a breadfruit and I cut it up into pieces, and then I add some water. I put about a third of the pot full of water, and I boil it for about 45 minutes to make the breadfruit. Then that's cooked, and then you can make that into breadfruit salad, or you can make it into breadfruit French fries or breadfruit mashed potatoes. So I would say the most delicious things that you can have are, breadfruit salad, breadfruit mashed potatoes, and the mashed potatoes you can make a miso gravy with it, and you could make it into French fries. So I'm going to show you French fries right now. So you just take the breadfruit and you put it on your little cutting board. This is a bamboo cutting board, which is so sweet, given to me by my cousin. And you just cut these up into just little pieces. It's so simple. You just cut them up into like little French fries size pieces. It's kind of like home fries. And you don't have to be like, one thing about food is that you don't have to make it into a big trip. You can just do it really easily. You don't have to be a perfectionist when it comes to, because no matter what you do, it's going to taste good. Like, that's the one thing about breadfruit, is that you cannot really go wrong because it's so yummy that no matter what you do with it, it's going to end. People are going to love it. Like, to me, there's nothing more delicious in the world. If you like potatoes, a breadfruit is 100 times more delicious than a potato, and it's also more nutritious, and it's more hearty. It tastes like, to some people, it tastes almost like eating chicken breast. It's like a real hearty meal, and it also has in it protein. It's not just a carbohydrate. If you look on Wikipedia under breadfruit, they will tell you that breadfruit is something that you could eat just breadfruit and you could be healthy. It's like a superfood, and it has all the nutrients you could want. It's good for your hair, for your skin, for your nails. It's used as a beauty product, and people who eat breadfruit are going to be radiantly handsome and beautiful. And then just a little bit of soy sauce just gives it a kind of like salty taste a little bit, just a little soy sauce. It also adds a little color. And then you take this and you put it in your convection oven on broil for about 15 minutes. And out comes the world's most delicious breadfruit French fries. And I'll tell you, I have had the Sacred Heart School kids here, I've had Hui Malama students here, and many other groups, and each one of them says that there's no French fries anywhere on the island, no matter where you go, that are more delicious than these. These are the number one, and all of those school kids say that they would go vegan if their parents would just serve them vegan food. So I'm saying to you parents, be good to your children and feed them food that was what the Hawaiians ate. And there were never in the history of humanity any race of humans stronger than the Hawaiians. They were able to travel 2,500 miles in these canoes back and forth, rowing on the ocean. They were the strongest people in the world, and what they ate is what we should eat. Wow. Okay, here we have the breadfruit French fries.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for us here at Mauitopia. I hope you've enjoyed yourself today. It's been a long, beautiful day on the North Shore. We've sat with Swami Swaroop, also known as Frederick, also known as just Swaroop. And if you want to call him anything else, just call him Beloved, because he is one of those beings whose light is truly an inspiration to the rest of us. Now, we're about to sit down and have a feast, a vegan feast extraordinaire on behalf of the land of the Aina of Maui. And I want to say thank you to you, Swaroop, for all that you do, for all that you represent, and all the space that you hold. May all that you have shared with us today inspire the people who are watching. And for those of you at home, if you want to be involved with the Spirit of Aloha Oceanfront Botanical Garden, then visit the website on your screen right now, or give a call to the number that you see at the bottom. In the meantime and in between time, remember that you are the one you've been looking for all along, and this world is just waiting for you to take the initiative and be the most beautiful possible version of yourself that you can be. So until next time, from us here at Aloha, we say, Viva la Evolution, And thank you for joining us on Mauitopia.
Aloha.
Let there be light, there was light, and love said, it is good, I can see you.
I can see you.
Let there be light, there was light, and love said, it is good, I can see you.
I can see you.